back, look. Let's just go back a bit. I just want to take you back to 1992. It was my first opportunity to vote. And I remember the night before election, watching Neil Kinnock, and he said, "We're all right. We're all right," he said. And I believed him. And I needed to believe him. I am here, and we are here, because we know what happens when we lose. I remember those stops and searches. I remember the riots. I remember the sign outside Tottenham Town Hall that said 25% of the community was unemployed. And in the black community, we knew it was 40%. That is why we are here. And notwithstanding our differences, that is why I am a loyalist, loyal to Gordon Brown, and determined that he wins this general election. For all that is said, we are at our best when we are a movement, and we must become a movement again. Not a progressive consensus, a progressive movement. We were born out of a movement that gave us workers' rights, that began the emancipation of women, of the black community, of gay men and women. We have to be a movement again. And that means that all of our traditions, Christian socialist, the civil liberties traditions in our party, the unions, new movements that bring us closer to a sustainable planet, must find a voice in our party. So this is a moment when I do believe we have to stay united. We have to stay united. But it's where also we are able to be self-critical, to reflect on where we've been and where we now need to go. We all remember what those schools were like. Leaking roofs, teachers with no resources, class sizes overflowing, no children's centres. We remember the queues in the NHS. Now, in some ways, New Labour was born as a reaction to those tough, grim 18 years. And yes, we made compromises. It was the sort of politics of and. Tough on crime and the causes of crime. Rights and responsibilities. Economic efficiency and social justice. We were responding to an agenda where we had been out of power for so long. And despite all that we achieved, the NHS, comprehensive schooling, the welfare state, all of it, how long were we in power? How long were we in power in the 20th century? 22 years. This next election that we must win is in part about whether we will get longer in the 21st century. And we must, because there is so much more to do. Now, yes, sometimes I felt, particularly outsider, insider, in government, if you like. Sometimes I felt the language has become too managerial, technocratic. Perhaps that's what happens when you feel you've got to come in and drive the public services in the way that happen. We talk about things like the Decent Homes Initiative. It's not an initiative. It's a commitment to give the poorest people in this country, boys and girls sharing one bedroom and a bedsit with two parents. It's a commitment to give them something that they deserve of right. When 27 teenagers are murdered on the streets of London, as they were last year, yes, the sensible response is to increase the numbers of police officers. But the sensitive response is to have something to say about mentoring, to have something to say about youth services, and to have something to say about parenting. That means that if we can become and remain a progressive movement, we will need to move beyond talking solely about the public services into the public realm. We will need to discuss things like dignity and decency. 10, 12 years ago, Labour members like me and Douglas, representing the kinds of poor seats that we do, we would have been satisfied with just a job for our constituents. Now it is important we ask more fundamental questions about the nature of those jobs, because working in a call centre isn't always fun, because agency work is not always secure. Those are the questions in the public realm that we've got to be taking forward. And this is our century. It is a collective century. The answers to climate change we have to find together, as we have heard this evening. The answers to an ageing society we have to find together, as we have heard this evening. Only we can place the appropriate limits on the market, as we have seen so acutely. That is why we must win the next election and fight to win the next election. Now, we know what movements look like. We know what these values look like. Many of us, and certainly many of us who are young, took part in an election in America where we saw that movement. We saw everybody for Obama. Unions for Obama, students for Obama, gays for Obama, Muslims for Obama, nuclear physicists for Obama. That's what we need to drive in this country. And this next election, my view is that there are only 3 zones in which elections are fought. They are either fear elections. Bush was very good at those, and so was Margaret Thatcher. Or they are incumbency competence elections. We had that last time in 2005, and often the turnout drops a bit. Or they're hope elections, and I think that that's what we've seen in America. If this is to be a fair election, the Labour Party had better take its gloves off and demonstrate what David Cameron really means, because he ain't going to increase the minimum wage. He will close those children's centres. The queues will rise in the NHS, and we know it, and we need to go out there and explain it to the people of this country.
Thank you, David.